Pokemon boxes are such a central part of Pokemon that you probably don't even realize how often you use them. Especially during Nuzlocke, when needing to pull out Pokemon with the type advantage is vital, and when you inevitably lose one, you can always go back to your stockpile of Pokemon ready to be used as fodder. Well, what if you did a hardcore Nuzlocke where we banned all uses of the Pokemon box? Luckily for us, Pokemon Sun and Moon added a quality of life feature where once you catch a Pokemon, you're given the option to add them directly to your party, with no pesky Bill acting as the middleman, so we won't have to carry the cadavers of our creatures that meet an ill fate. But I'll be doing this in Ultra Sun, because I'm a masochist. I'm sure you're familiar with the rules of a hardcore Nuzlocke, but to summarize, if a Pokemon faints, it's no longer usable. I won't be using any items in battle, but held items are fine. I can't overlevel past the next trial's highest leveled Pokemon, and I'll be playing on set mode. And the specific rules for this Nuzlocke: I can only bring the same number of Pokemon as the trial Totems or Kahuna. For Totems, I'll be basing my number on their number of allied Pokemon. I won't be allowed to use Z moves, and I can't access the Pokemon box at any point during my run. So no depositing and withdrawing Pokemon suitable for the next boss battle. Once we deposit them, they're gone. Meaning not only do we need to consider which Pokemon we bring for the Totems and Kahunas, but we also have to be certain which Pokemon we're not going to need again. And that's that, so let's get started. This is one of the few games where I actually like all the starter choices, including the final stages. So how do we pick our starter? Well, the way I usually pick my starter is whichever one would make the game more difficult for me, and I think out of the three, that the Litten line is probably the one that struggles the most, despite likely being the strongest overall. So Grey Tiger joins the team. After a battle with How, who kicked off the trend of our rival picking the weaker starter for some reason, we get our first encounter. Grubbin's a guaranteed encounter, but since we already have Pokeballs at this point, I typically just count this as my first encounter anyway. I call him Piston Honda. After another battle with How, Game Freak did the unthinkable and actually sent us to school. Well, all we have to do is beat up a couple of trainers, and the first one is a Bonsly, which both Grubbin and Litten are weak to. I managed to get off a few mud slaps with Piston Honda as Bonsly misses all of its attacks, and then it gets healed with the potion. I use up the remaining mud slaps and switch into Grey Tiger, and after a few licks, while Bonsly misses flails, it goes down. I don't think it used a single rock throw that battle. The next couple of battles are much more simple. Just a note, I skipped my trainer school encounter for now by following this path. If you know, you know. But then we had to fight the final trainer. I lead with Piston Honda and it flinches turn 1 to Ekans' bite. Alright, I stay in for one more turn, and Ekans uses Wrap, trapping Honda in. I'd like to say that Honda kept using Mud Slaps as Ekans missed all of its moves, but eventually a combination of passive damage, flinches, and the final bite takes Piston Honda out. Grey Tiger comes out, and yeah, I should have just started with him. Well, to get expelled from school, we also need to beat up the teacher, but of course with Grey Tiger being our only Pokemon, and Poplio being our opponent, there's really nothing much I can do. Great start. We're always told in school to ignore our bullies, to not stand up for ourselves, and no wonder why when it goes all the way to the top. And this time I decided to include the grass outside of Kukui's lab as a new encounter, as that has a separate intro card, and catch Queen Hippo, the Slowpoke. Alright, now I know for a fact that Bonsly doesn't have Rock Throw, so we can get through this battle with a few Embers. The next few trainers are pretty easy with Grey Tiger, but there's a reason why I didn't want to use him so early on. Onto the teacher. This time I have my whole team still alive, albeit some lower levels than others. I lead with Hippo, who takes a Water Gun and uses Yawn. I stay in to use a Tackle while Poplio falls asleep. I switch into Piston Honda, and next turn Poplio wakes up to use a Water Gun. Honda uses Mud Slap. I decide to stay in for one more Mud Slap, and Oranberry lets me stay in to use another. I switch out to Hippo, and despite the drops, Poplio has not missed one attack. I can see it's using Pound, so another Yawn later I switch right into Grey Tiger, as Poplio uses Water Gun, which finally misses. Poplio falls asleep, and after a few scratches later, we successfully get expelled from school and we can move on with our life. In Howley City, we have a wide range of encounters, all with different types and abilities, some of which can evolve into some pretty powerful Pokemon. We get the common Furfrou. Isn't terrible, but how excited can you be running into a Furfrou? I call her Von Kaiser. Ilima absolutely tears through my team, but with having 4 Pokemon to switch between, I'm able to keep all of them alive. Now you may have noticed that I set my level cap to be level 16. Well, the next Totem's level is actually 12. 16 is actually the level of Hala's highest leveled Pokemon. The reason I've done this is because if you've ever played a Nuzlocke in this game, you'll know how hard it can be to actually keep your Pokemon within that level cap. Like with how many battles we've done up to this point, why is the level so low? Mind you, this is the hardest vanilla game in the series to do a hardcore Nuzlocke in, and this just feels deceptive. And this was always supposed to be a soft cap, and my team seems to have stayed within the level cap, so I'll bring it back down to 12. I grab my next two encounters, Mr. Sandman the Drowsy and Don Flamenco the Murkrow. Time for our first trial. A couple of notes on how I handle trials since they're different to gyms. The level cap is lifted once we start the trial since we can't leave, but I can't use rare candies to grind while it's still going on. And since I can't use the box, I'll just be benching my unused Pokemon. They'll still be in the party, I just won't be allowed to use them. And this will only apply when I'm actually fighting the Totem Pokemon. Anyway, this trial is pretty straightforward. We defeat a couple of Yungoos and an older Yungoos, which grants both of the Pokemon we'll be using a level. For Gumshoes, I bring Mr. Sandman and Von Kaiser. Gumshoes gets a defense boost, which sucks as both of my Pokemon's best moves are physical. Von Kaiser's headbutt does about a third, while Gumshoes tries his hand at speed control and calls out Yungoos. Kaiser outspeeds again, a single headbutt taking out Yungoos, and Gumshoes seems hellbent on trying to be faster. Gumshoes' hard work finally pays off as he outspeeds and misses his Super Fang. Then Kaiser hits a headbutt, which crits. First Totem down. There really isn't much that can go wrong during this trial, but that felt cruel. I've been there before, buddy. Let's just move on. On the way to Melly Meadow, we run into some berry trees, which means we now have access to orange berries. Well, I could in theory just grind days by switching the clock to get unlimited orange berries, so by my rules, we now have access to unlimited orange berries. While looking for Nebby in the meadow, we get ambushed by aliens whose best contribution to this game is their battle theme. I really wish they did more with these characters. Dulcin's our Furfrou and I lead with Mr. Sandman. The absolute fool uses baby doll eyes, but I'm always thinking ahead, and Sandman goes for a confusion, and I think I saw some pixels change there. And then Furfrou uses headbutt, which changes well over half of the pixels. An orange berry brings Sandman back to green, but he gets flinched. This time I try to go for a hypnosis, but Dulce reads me and uses sand attack. Of course hypnosis misses. Try one more time and I witness the exact repeat of the turn. The tides are turning. One last time, headbutt does a lot, but doesn't crit. And Mr. Sandman flinches. Time to fight Firefrou with Firefrou, and Von Kaiser comes out. She gets hit with a headbutt on the switch, but time to use Dulce's strategy against him as I go for a baby doll eyes, and he does the same. I promise that was in fact a different turn. I'll use one final baby doll eyes, and Furfrou switches to the offensive, and this time I see no pixels move whatsoever. We have the power of friendship on our side and can do something that the friendless Dulce cannot. Switch Pokemon. So Von Kaiser holds down the fort with baby doll eyes as Dulce resorts to his cheap tactics. And now into my ace, Great Tiger, and after many Fire Fangs, one crits and burns. Now I can bring out Queen Hippo to tank one last attack as Furfrou burns to a crisp. Did that feel long for a battle against one Pokemon? Good. Now you know how I felt. That battle took 10 minutes. Furfrou's actually really threatening this early into the game. Pretty good stats and has access to Stab Headbutt already. Not to mention an ability that doubles its defense. I underestimated Von Kaiser's potential. Walking out Melly Meadow, Hal challenges us to another battle, but after our bout with Dulce, what can he actually do? Nothing is the answer. Don Flamenco pecks away at Rowlet, and after realizing Von Kaiser's true power, both Pikachu and Noibat go down to a single headbutt, and we can move straight on to our grand trial against Hala. Hala leads with Machop, who sets up a focus energy as Sandman's confusion does about a third. You know, I always thought Drowsy would be slightly better than this. Sandman moves first using confusion, and Machop gets his revenge, which was critical. I make my call and keep Sandman in, who gets to move first, taking Machop out with the final confusion. Next up is Crabrawler, and he has Pursuit. There's no way out for Sandman from this one. I send out Don, whose wing attack does over half, and Hala fires up his Z move. All out pummeling comes out, which Don survives, hanging on by the thread of his life. One more wing attack puts an end to this terrifying Pokemon. Finally it's Makuhita, who is completely walled by Queen Hippo. A few confusions later, we get our ticket off this island. Well, first let's find a replacement for Mr. Sandman. Carrying him along feels disrespectful. In the Melly Meadow, we have quite a lot of options, all of which can be useful in one way or the other. But of course we get the worst one, that being Oricorio. It's got such a cool concept, but can't even really utilize it until level 40 when it learns Revelation Dance, which trust me, it's not making it to. Even for a single stage Pokemon, its stats are pretty mediocre. Worse yet, I've even used my Flamenco nickname. We spend 4 tutorials on learning how to climb a wave. 4. And we've made it to Akala Island. I also absolutely crushed the Mantine minigame, which I promise will be relevant later. We can move straight on to our next battle with Hal, as we make no changes to our team for the time being. Hal's already got a team of 4, and we haven't even got our second badge yet. Pizza Pasta starts off with an air cutter that does just under half. And Razor Leaf was a strange choice. The next air cutter gets a higher roll, and we're on to Pikachu. I switch into Von Kaiser on Electro Ball. Pikachu outspeeds to hit another Electro Ball, but Headbutt doesn't one-shot this time. Pikachu throws using a quick attack and goes down the next turn. Noibat's adorable, but Von Kaiser just sees it as another target to assert dominance on. Lastly, we're on Eevee, and after a baby doll eyes, it can handle Headbutt better than the last two. Still can't really do anything in return though. I'm not going to comment on how, I already know what this game does to people that get ahead of themselves. But why tell when I can show? Well, first we can fight Gladion. Gladion's by far my favorite rival. Look at him trying to hold back a JoJo pose. A headbutt knocks the Zubat-shaped T-Cloth off Zorua and even flinches. Another one brings out a sentient Zubat-shaped T-Cloth. Two more headbutts and out comes Type Null. We're fighting a Pokemon with almost legendary stats before this game's equivalent of a second gym. Thankfully its moveset is more akin to an early gen legendary, and as it's Gladion's last Pokemon, we can get away with spamming baby doll eyes. Not only that, but Von Kaiser's first two headbutts get flinches, and that puts us at enough of a lead, not needing to switch out ourselves, eventually taking down the legendary, all while at a lower level, weakened by two Pokemon beforehand. I've been sleeping on Furfrou for far too long. I was skeptical at first, but now I'm ready to be indoctrinated into the church of Furfrou. Gladion's great. He's the fun kind of edgy rather than the sad edgy that Silver exudes that just feels too on the nose. Anyway, on to our next trial. I bring Don Flamenco, Piston Honda, and Pizza Pasta. As I was saying before being rudely cut off by Gladion, this second trial's insane. Not only are we fighting Araquanid, who has the ability Water Bubble which doubles its water moves and halves damage from fire moves, but we're fighting it in the rain. Thankfully it shows some mercy and it has a terrible water move, being Bubble, but it still hits hard. Pizza Pasta starts off with a Feather Dance as Bubble does a lot less damage than I was expecting. Maybe I was hyping this up a bit too much. Araquanid calls on Jupiter, and Pizza's air cutter sends it back from whence it came. Also does decent damage to the Totem. Bubble does a lot, and while Citrus Berry heals up Pizza, she's still in range of another Bubble. I should have just sacked as on the switch and Don takes over half from Bubble. The Citrus Berry at least takes him out of range of a non-crit one. Wing Attack does some damage, but Bubble hits, proving my last turn statement completely wrong as we say goodbye to Don Flamenco. I send Pizza Pasta back out and Masquerain gets summoned. Its Intimidate is wasted, but it avoids Pasta's air cutter. Araquanid hangs on by a thread. Masquerain sets up a Tailwind, and Bubble puts Pizza Pasta down. Finally it's Piston Honda, and can he even survive the incoming attack from two Pokemon? Masquerain even uses Bug Bite, stealing its Citrus Berry. Bubble comes out, and Honda survives. Araquanid tries to hold on to dear life, eating its Orcan Berry, but Honda decides it's the opposing side's turn to bleed. A Spark takes down the Totem Pokemon. That's all well and good, but Masquerain still outspeeds, and while Bug Bite didn't do much, Honda seems to be in range. Masquerain uses Bug Bite, and I was once again proved wrong as Honda wasn't even in crit range. Masquerain gets hit with Karma as an Acrobatics boosted by her stealing Honda's prized possession wins us our second trial. The setup for their battle was wild. I can't imagine what Araquanid would be like with even a semi-decent water move. Charger Bug also surprised me with how bulky it is. 2 losses means we need to find 2 replacements. However, as I mentioned before, I've skipped all the encounters on this island up until now, so we have quite a few options. Well, the first encounter I get is from the area that just opened up to us. Surfing on the water, we get our own Jupiter and call it Glass Joe. And then I head back to Paniola Ranch to catch Super Macho Man, the Mudbray. Both encounters could help for our next trial, but Glass Joe in particular can evolve into Araquanid right on the level cap. Before any of that, we have another fight with Dulce, and he sends out a brand new Pokemon never seen before. But more importantly, where did Furfrou go? Mudbray teaches him what happens to heretics. Once again, we skip all the new encounters and head straight to our next trial in Wella Volcano Park. Now for this one, I can only bring 2 Pokemon. And not only that, but we have 2 back-to-back battles before the Totem with no chance to heal in between. I bring Von Kaiser and my newly evolved Glass Joe. The first Marowak goes down to a single Bubble Beam, so we come out unscathed. But next up is good old Hiker Dave, whose Magma outspeeds to hit Clear Smog, not doing much, but it survives the Bubble Beam. Feint Attack does a fair bit more, but not enough to slow us down, and the Bite brings the Totem to us. The Totem Marowak starts off with a double speed boost, which could actually be bad for us. I send out Glass Joe. Marowak thankfully goes for a Flame Wheel instead of a Detect, but doesn't get Joe quite low enough to activate her berry. Joe uses Bubble Beam, which doesn't even do half, so Salazzle gets summoned onto the field. This is a pretty bad situation, but it gets worse as Salazzle opts to use Poison Gas instead of an attack. The reason Poison's bad is that both Marowak and Salazzle have moves that benefit from this, Hex and Venoshock, and Bubble Beam doesn't even one-shot Salazzle. As expected, Salazzle goes for Venoshock, finishing Joe off. Had Joe not been poisoned, she could have likely survived another turn. I send out Von Kaiser and Marowak throws using Detect. Surprisingly, Von Kaiser outspeeds to take Salazzle with Headbutt, though nothing Von Kaiser does should surprise me anymore. Alright, all that's left is Marowak, and as we outsped Salazzle, we can outspeed Marowak. Von Kaiser uses a Bite, and it doesn't do much, but Brick Break does over half. At least Citrus Berry pulls Kaiser out of range of a non-crit one. Another Bite, and we just need one more. And then Cursed Body activates. I completely forgot about Cursed Body. And to add insult, Kaiser actually pulls through and survives on 5 HP. But unfortunately, my short-sightedness means that we have no other moves to hit Marowak. There is literally nothing I can do but sacrifice the great Von Kaiser, and we lose our second attempt. What an absolutely stupid way to go, and that's completely on me. I have full confidence that had I given Von Kaiser at least one other move, we would have won. Like Von Kaiser really pulled through at the end there, and I messed up. Anyway, enough crying, on to the next run. Now to come clean, this isn't actually my third attempt. For whatever reason, I thought I'd keep the attempt number as 3, as it was the third one I intended to include in the video. I kinda regret that now, but what's done is done. This, I think, is my 7th run where I make a real attempt. In reality, it's probably somewhere closer to my 15th, as for my next strat, I decided to reset my runs until I could get Pizza Pasta the Inkay, who is a 15% encounter outside of Kukui's lab. Specifically one that has the ability Contrary, so about a 7.5% chance. It's right at the start of the game, so it really isn't that big of a time sink, and believe me, Pizza Pasta is worth it. During the early game, he absolutely ruins AI, especially ones with speed control, as they're always baited into using stat-dropping moves, which of course increases Pizza's stats thanks to Contrary, which in turn makes them even more desperate to drop his stats. They do break out of this loop eventually, and being able to take advantage of this during the late game is rare, but for now, the first island is basically free. For example, Gumshoos has Scary Face, a speed-lowering move, and it's constantly baited into using that while only raising Pizza's speed, which makes it use Scary Face even more. Throughout the whole battle, he only hits me once. Poor Gumshoos. This time in the cemetery, I catch Kid Quick, the Zubat, and after Hala, I replaced my dead Sandman with Miss Dream, the Cottony. Aside from that, the rest of my team is pretty much the same. This run's Araquanid goes a lot easier as Miss Dream has Prankster, allowing it to get off a Leech Seed turn 1. The next turn, it even paralyzes Araquanid while also surviving its Aurora Beam. From there, I'm able to just switch in and out as Araquanid slowly gets its HP drained. After which, Piston uses Acrobatics on Jupiter, getting us past this trial. For as much as I hyped it up, I don't think I've lost a single attempt here. But now we're back where we were, and the truth is, I lost another run here after my last one. That time I got a stupid Poliwag that couldn't even evolve into a Poliwhirl by the time we got to Marowak. Well, I realized that getting a Jupiter during the night was impossible anyway, so this run I patiently waited until day, got the 40% Jupiter I was looking for, and then patiently waited again until night. This time I also had a big-brained idea that would guarantee me the next trial. The level cap is 22. That's the level Jupiter evolves, but it's also the level that Zubat evolves. Golbat's alright, but it isn't amazing. However, Crobat is. But how do we get Crobat when the level cap's 22? Well, like I mentioned at the start, in these games, I lift the level cap once the trial starts, and there's 2 battles before the Totem. So I run an island marathon with Kid Quick holding a Soothe Bell, and train both him and Glass Joe so that they're just about to reach level 23. Now when we defeat the first Marowak, Kid Quick can evolve into a nice strong Crobat before we even fight the Totem. So back onto Totem Marowak, this time with Glass Joe and Kid Quick. Marowak starts off with Detect, meaning Salazzle can get in while Marowak's still healthy. Not a great start. But the next turn, Marowak tries to be smart, pulling off another Detect, while Salazzle gets off an early Poison again. But Marowak wasn't my target. A Bubble Beam from Glass Joe one-shot Salazzle. Did that one level matter that much? Hex from Marowak does pitiful damage, and Bubble Beam does over half. How bad was my last Glass Joe? This one even has a minor special attack nature. Glass Joe isn't in crit range, so another Bubble Beam guarantees us the win. I didn't even need the Crobat that I planned so meticulously for. Either a single level really does make all the difference, or my last Araquanid had a minus nature and horrible IVs. This tells me that as long as you get Jupiter as your encounter, this Totem is more or less free. I just got unlucky. I don't really see any reason to switch up my team, so we head straight to the next trial. I bring Great Tiger, Piston Honda, and Kid Quick. Now this battle can seem really easy on the surface, especially with our Pokemon, but if you're not careful, Lurantis with help from Comfey can turn into a defensive tank that just recovers any damage you do to it. It even has Leaf Guard, which means you have to be quick about giving it a status if that's your plan, as both of its ally Pokemon have Sunny Day. Lurantis, like the previous two, gets a speed boost. But luckily, none of Lurantis' moves can actually hit Kid Quick. Kid Quick goes for a cross poison and lands a first turn crit. But Lurantis calls out her ally, Comfey, and this is where it starts. Lurantis has Synthesis, and Comfey has both Floral Healing and Flower Shield. I go for a cross poison on Lurantis anyway just to see if I can get the kill, but Lurantis outspeeds to use Synthesis, recovering most of his HP. Cross poison doesn't get the crit, and Comfey sets up Sunny Day. This means we can't get a poison on Lurantis for 5 turns, and Synthesis will recover even more health now. Lurantis recovers all of its health back, and cross poison doesn't even do half. Comfey raises Lurantis' defense with Flower Shield. This made me realize that I need to switch my target to Comfey as I'm getting nowhere, so after giving Lurantis one more boost, Comfey goes down to a cross poison. But there was a reason why I was avoiding going down this route at first. Not even waiting a turn to grieve, Lurantis calls out her second ally, Kecleon. And Kecleon has Ancient Power, which can hit all of my Pokemon for super effective damage. And while Kecleon isn't that strong, a single Omni boost could make things go south really quick. With Kecleon out, he's my next target, so I start with a cross poison as Kecleon hits Dizzy Punch, which also confuses Kid Quick. I switch into Grey Tiger as the sun runs out, which baits Kecleon into using a Sunny Day. With the sun up, Firefang is able to finish Kecleon off. Now with all the threats gone, I can bring Kid Quick back out, and Lurantis can do nothing to stop him. A few cross poisons later, we defeat the final totem of this island. This battle can actually be really difficult if you don't have the exact Pokemon that can counter Lurantis' moves, but luckily for us, Crobat really trivializes this fight. Well, there's nothing really stopping us from going straight to Olivia, but if you haven't noticed, 4 of my 6 Pokemon are weak to rock, and the other 2 are neutral, so we need a new Pokemon. Luckily for us, outside of Weller Volcano Park on Route 7, we can get a guaranteed Diglett, who's a ground and steel type, double resistances. And not only that, but Kagero can evolve within the new level cap. But who should I get rid of? Well, I don't get rid of any of the ones that are weak to rock. Instead I retire Miss Dream, the Pokemon with the type advantage. I can't really get a Sunstone until quite later into the game, and I don't really think Whimsicott's going to be that useful for any of the immediate boss battles. This choice kinda sucked because Prankster could have been really helpful during the late game bosses, but I actually need to be able to make it there first. And Cottony doesn't really have the stats to help us yet. You could also use the Pokepelago, but you need a certain number of Pokemon in your boxes, and since we can't withdraw them once we send them there, I don't really want to limit my encounters yet. On to Olivia. Alright, Plimeria. I bring out my brand new Kagero, now Dugtrio, as Golbat can't really do much to it. And as I say that, it proceeds to get confused, hit itself, and then gets crit by Wing Attack. Tangling Hair lowers Golbat's speed, and I double down with Rock Tomb. Into Kid Quick, and Wing Attack does almost half. My own Wing Attack brings Golbat below half, and Kid Quick gets confused. I figure I can stall a turn using Roost, and Wing Attack crits again. Crits are a 1 in 24 chance in this game. Kid Quick gets another chance to use Wing Attack, and it still doesn't kill. Wing Attack puts Kid into crit range, so I need to switch. Into Grey Tiger, and Wing Attack does over half without a crit. What's this Golbat been eating? With the speed drops, Grey Tiger is able to outspeed and finally brings Golbat down with Bite. Salandit's out and outspeeds to use the Flame Burst, not doing much. I figure I can stay in to use a couple of bites, and after a Poison Gast, I just need to use one more. And Salandit's Flame Burst crits, leaving Grey Tiger on 3 HP. A final bite wins us the battle. I was ready to just skim past this battle. I was focusing all my planning into Olivia, and then Plumeria almost took my starter from me. Well, Olivia is still further up, so let's see who she actually does take from me. I bring Kagero, Glass Joe, and Grey Tiger. Olivia leads with Anorith, and I send out Glass Joe. Anorith somehow outspeeds and hits a smackdown that does over half, and a single bubble beam takes Anorith out. The leaps out, and this thing's actually pretty threatening to my team. I go for a Bug Bite that does a quarter. And while Ancient Power doesn't do much, that chance for an Omni Boost is terrifying. Another Bug Bite brings a leap into heal range, and Ancient Power leaves Glass Joe low. There's no harm in staying in, and surprisingly, Olivia doesn't heal, allowing Glass Joe to feast on the leap with Bug Bite. I switch to Kagero for a big moment, and Lycanroc goes for its Z move, Continental Crush, which even with the 4 times resistance, does about a third. Lycanroc outspeeds to use Bites, leaving Kagero in red, but not getting the flinch. Kagero rolls a Magnitude, which lands on 6. There was a 35% chance for a bad outcome. Kagero is now able to outspeed thanks to the speed drop from Tangling Hair, and I figure it's best to lower Lycanroc's speed further using Bulldoze, which does about half. I should have just stuck to Bulldoze. Another bite puts an early end to Kagero. I bring out Glass Joe expecting a heal, but instead she outspeeds to hit a Bubble Beam, winning us our second Grand Trial. Of all the Pokemon I could lose, I lost the one with the 4 times resistance. The plan was going to be to sack Glass Joe, but I saw a chance to keep everyone alive, which didn't work out. I also remember that I could have gotten Leech Life just before the entrance to the ruins, so I really didn't plan this out as well as I thought I did. Before our field trip to the Aether Paradise, I need a replacement for Kagero, so I sift through my skipped encounters until we once again welcome Super Macho Man the Mudbray back to the team. Unfortunately, no stamina this time. I could get guaranteed Larvitar in the Diglett Tunnel, but I banned 2 of the legendaries, so I don't really see Pupitar being too useful. In the Aether Paradise, we meet a totally not insane CEO who I'm sure has absolutely no relation to the only other 2 characters in this game that have platinum blonde hair. You can technically run away from Question Mark, but with Super Macho Man out, the safest strat was to kick it into submission. With that, we now have passage to the 3rd island. Landing on Ula'ula Island, we're immediately thrust into a battle with Hao, and this time he has 5 Pokemon. I kind of forgot to grind my Pokemon for this part. Dartrix is first, and not being able to do much to Kid Quick, it goes down to a few cross poisons. Raichu on the other hand is pretty scary with the Stab Psychic coming off decent special attack, but we have Pizza Pasta. Raichu uses a pathetic quick attack and it goes down to a foul play. I'm not sure if the crit mattered as Raichu has okay attack. Next up is Tauros and then has Pursuit, which is never good. I'm not confident Pizza Pasta can survive a boosted Pursuit, so I stay in and it turns out it could have. Regardless, Pizza sets up a Reflect. I foolishly stay in and Horn Attack does way too much. Foul Play manages to do over half. A crit will kill whether it's from Horn Attack or Pursuit, so I risk it and Foul Play finishes Tauros off. With Vaporeon out, I switch into Piston Honda and Vaporeon's Water Pulse gives me a mini heart attack as it breaks the 4th wall, freezing my very real 3DS for a frame. I risk the crit and Piston Spark does over half and also paralyzes Vaporeon. Serves it right. Another Spark and we're on Snowbat. And it actually survives an attack. Not that I can do anything. Not really that hard of a battle, but Tauros can be scary, and if my DS actually did crash, I have no clue when my last save was. Interestingly, this was actually our second to last battle with Hao. We aren't even halfway through the game yet. How long is this video? Well, no need to pad for time, we can move straight on to the next trial with no changes to the team. Well, Super Macho Man is now Mudsdale, but that's it. Togedemaru starts off with an Iron Head, not getting a flinch, and high horsepower brings it straight into red. A poor Dedenne gets forced out and another Iron Head with no flinch later, the totem goes down to one last high horsepower. Dedenne has no moves to hit Mudsdale. Dedenne tries its best. It's nice to have an easy trial once in a while. Not only that, but our boy Guzma even graces us with the battle. Guzma starts off with Golisopod and it takes a wing attack from Kid Quick pretty well. Razor Shell in return does a lot more than I was expecting. Another wing attack and Golisopod makes a tactical retreat. Masquerade's out and intimidates Kid Quick, but it's Masquerade, so I stay in to hit a wing attack doing under half. Masquerade responds with an Icy Wind that leaves Kid on 7 HP. It's a Masquerade. I switch into Super Macho Man and Air Slash does well over half from Masquerade. Into Great Tiger, now Incineroar, and Masquerade once again does over half, this time with a scarier Bug Buzz. I can't risk my team taking even more damage, so I stay in. Masquerade outspeeds, but doesn't get the crit, and a Fire Fang brings the monstrous Masquerade down. But Golisopod's still in the back. I switch into Glass Joe on the Razor Shell, then Sucker Punch leaves her on 15 HP. For some reason I thought Infestation was a good idea. Next into Pizza, Sucker Punch fails, and as first impressions Golisopod's only bug move, Pizza Pasta can use its own power to knock it out after getting hit with the Sucker Punch. Where did this come from? I don't remember Guzma being so tough, at least for his first battle. Turns out his team is fully EV trained, with Masquerade having max EVs in both special attack and speed. And this is going to be the norm from here on out. Ultra Sun and Moon are so underrated. On the way to the Tapu Village, unlike the original games, we're actually able to evolve Piston Honda into a Vikavolt with a monstrous special attack. And at this point, I realized I made a big mistake. Vikavolt learns Bug Buzz at level 31. It is currently level 34. And you don't get the move tutor until the very end of the game. Meaning Vikavolt will have no bug moves until the very end of the game. Is what I would have said if not for my amazing surfing skills. Once again, unlike the originals, Ultra Sun and Moon have some move tutors, and while they only accept BP, you can get these without ever needing to risk your Pokemon in battle. That is, of course, by playing the Mantine Surfing minigame. And after my masterful display from earlier, we have exactly enough points to teach Vikavolt Signal Beam. It's no Bug Buzz, but it's something. As with all of my long drawn out explanations, there is a point, I swear. As from here on out, the team will have access to some pretty powerful moves now that we've unlocked all the beaches. Aside from the one on the final island, but that has no move tutors anyway. This is also a good way to get EV boosting items early on as well, if you use them. Well, enough stalling, we're now our 6th trial against the Totem Mimikyu, and this happens to also be where I lost my last run. Mimikyu is the first Totem that gets an Omni boost. Yup, a boost to every single one of its stats. It even has an ability that lets it take 1 hit for free, meaning it gets a free hit. It's also holding a Lumberry, meaning you have to hit at least 2 moves to status it. And lastly, we can only bring 3 Pokemon. None of my Pokemon can resist all of its moves, and there's not really many combinations that can. Mimikyu is the reason why I decided to soft reset until I landed an Inkay, but even despite that, Mimikyu has Leech Life. A strong bug move that's 4 times effective against Pizza Pasta. This battle needs some more planning. And I think the first step is getting a Steel type. While we have no guaranteed ones, we have 3 chances to get one, 4 if you include pseudo legendaries. First I head to Blush Mountain and I don't get the 10% Togedemaru. I head to the Melee Outer Cape and I don't get the 20% Magnemite. Finally it's Route 7 where we have a 50% chance to land a Steel type and we land a Pineco. Not the Steel type I wanted, but it'll have to do. I think it's time to give Glass Joe a rest and add Glass Joe II to the team. I then teach him Bulldoze, Reflect, and Volt Switch. And I think we're ready for the trial. Great Tiger tears through this poor ghastly family just living their lives, and Acerola proceeds to haunt my dreams. I'm always a fan when they do a small horror segment in the Pokemon game. Speaking of which, we even get jump scared into a battle. Mimikyu gets an Omni boost, and who better to deal with her than our trusty Fortress? Mimikyu starts off with a Shadow Claw doing about a quarter, and Glass Joe sets up a Reflect. Bayonet gets called out and the only move we don't want to see is Curse, because YouTube hates bad words. Mimikyu once again goes for a Shadow Claw, which of course crits. Lovely. This crit was particularly bad as it happened after the Reflect, so that burned a turn. Bayonet thankfully hits a Feint attack which allows Joe another turn. As Joe hits a Bulldoze lowering the opposing side's speed, it also breaks Mimikyu's disguise. Mimikyu's Shadow Claw doesn't crit this time and Glass Joe moves next to hit another Bulldoze. Bayonet spares Joe another turn using Will-O-Wisp. I was gonna see if I could keep Joe alive, but with the initial crit, I think sacking's safer, so goodbye Joe. Next into Pizza Pasta, and here's where it starts. With Mimikyu's speed lowered, Pizza Pasta can move first using a Topsy-Turvy, making Mimikyu's boosts work against her. And with the Reflect up and the dropped attack, a 4 times effective Leech Life can't kill. Bayonet tries to help, burning Pizza. Reflect wore off last turn, so I try and set up another one, completely forgetting that Mimikyu is now at a higher speed. And somehow Leech Life doesn't kill. Bayonet also finally uses the move I was hoping for, Screech, raising Pizza's defense. But there's no way I'm staying in, so out comes Great Tiger who takes a pathetic Leech Life and a Feint attack. The most Mimikyu can do is use Play Rough, doing paltry damage, and a couple of Fire Punches and knock out the Totem. After which Great Tiger can clean house using his Darkest Lariat, and we've completed the trial. This is the furthest I've made it so far. Before moving on, I once again need a replacement, but this time we don't have to go far as our next encounter is the guaranteed Frillish outside of the Mini-Mart. Welcome Glass Joe III. We have another battle with Plumeria, but this time Piston Honda can make quick work of Golbat with Thunderbolt. And although Salazzle catches me off guard with how much Sludge Bomb does, it goes down to a single Bulldoze. As if we didn't already know why, we get to go through a whole museum exhibition demonstrating why Team Skull is the best evil team. You have local businesses, mental health support groups, and even trivia night. The boss even sees us off. Guzma leaves with Golisopod, and this time we have Piston Honda, who after taking a first impression which does a lot of damage, can take Golisopod down with a single Thunderbolt. Masquerade's out and I know better this time. There's no way any of my team can take 2 hits from it. I stay in as it uses a Bug Buzz. And Piston Honda survives on just 2 HP. A Thunderbolt puts a swift end to Masquerade. But we still have Pinsir, and like the 2 before, it's also fully EV trained. It's also likely to use a random move this turn, so choosing who to switch into is even harder. I figure Kid Quick is the safest option, and my hunch pays off as Pinsir uses X-Scissor. This Pinsir has max defense, so a wing attack does barely a third, while Throat Chop brings Kid below half. I also forgot to give him a Citrus Berry. A crit kills, so switching to Grey Tiger, and the next turn Pinsir outspeeds to use Storm Throw. It's a move that always crits, so at least we know that's the worst outcome. Grey Tiger survives to use a Fire Punch. That barely leaves Pinsir alive. But then it burns. And then the burn barely leaves Pinsir alive. At the very least now I just need to stall a turn, so I switch into Glass Joe as Storm Throw goes right through it, and Pinsir succumbs to its burn damage. Guzma even gives us a Beginnium Z as a souvenir. Gladion missed out on the field trip and takes his anger out on us. Golbat starts off with an Acrobatics and Piston electrocutes it with Thunderbolt. Next up is type Null, but its level gives it away, so after surviving a Hyper Voice, Signal Beam reveals Zoroark, who goes down in 1 hit. Next up is the real type Null, so I switch into Great Tiger as it misses Crush Claw. Null uses another Crush Claw doing just below half, and Tiger does the same with Brick Break. I get a free switch into Glass Joe, but then find out that Null has Pursuit. I'm not sure if another Brine kills, but switching means Joe could get killed by a crit. I should have risked the crit, but I stay in, and Pursuit activates Citrus Berry. And Brine didn't get the kill. Null goes for another Pursuit, and Joe survives, Brine finally finishing Type Null off. There were definitely ways I could have played that safer, but why dwell? Onto Nanu. On the docks, we're stopped for our final battle on this island with Nanu, but since it's a grand trial, we have to limit our Pokemon. I bring Great Tiger, Super Macho Man, and Piston Honda. Nanu leads with Sableye and I lead with Macho Man. After a fake out, Sableye goes for a Shadow Ball doing almost half. A high horsepower does over half. Needing to keep my team healthy, I switch into Great Tiger, a Shadow Ball crit, and lowers his special defense. A Fire Punch knocks Sableye out. Next up is Krokorok, which gives me a free switch into Piston Honda, who after getting confused by Swagger, hitting itself, then taking a crunch, one-shots Krokorok with Signal Beam. Finally it's Persian, so I switch into Great Tiger expecting the Z move, but he gets hit with Power Gem instead, activating Citrus Berry. Next into Macho Man, and Power Gem also activates her Citrus Berry. Dark Pulse brings Macho Man into red, and High Horsepower doesn't even do half. I'm honestly unsure what the next move is. Persian still has a Z move, and all my team are around half HP, with their Citrus Berries eaten. I switch into Great Tiger, and Persian goes for the Z move. It still does a lot, leaving Great Tiger in the red though. I think we're at a point where I need to make a difficult decision. Out of my remaining Pokemon, I decided Super Macho Man's turn to take a nice long rest, and Macho Man survives. But no, really, I need the clean switch. I can safely bring out Piston Honda. Persian goes for a Power Gem, and Piston survives on 11 HP. A Signal Beam wins us our third Grand Trial. I think I did the best I could with the team I had, but I guess I could have always searched for Pokemon better suited for this battle, since I had quite a few encounters left over. Gladian smuggles me into the Aether Paradise to do his dirty work, but I need an encounter, so back to Ula'ula we go. And what better type to replace my ground type with than another ground type? Luckily for us, in the Haina Desert we can get a guaranteed ground type. A Trapinch would be great as a dragon type would add a few more resistances to the team. We instead get our third dark type, though I certainly won't complain about King Hippo, the crocodile. It even has Intimidate. Alright, back to save Lily. Now there's something we need to be careful of. Something that we didn't have to worry about since the first island. Until the next Totem, we have to go through this whole Aether Paradise arc, Poni Island, and Vast Poni Canyon. And yet, the new level cap is only 5 more than the previous one. Why? At the very least, a lot of the lattice trainers are optional, but for now we need to push through and be very careful about how we split XP. While King Hippo can tear through most of the Aether employees' Pokemon with its stabs, and it needs some training anyway. It was starting to get a bit boring, but rest assured, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And that light is Guzma. Guzma once again leads with Golisopod, and I stick with Piston Honda, who after taking a first impression which does a lot of damage, can take Golisopod down with a single Thunderbolt. Next up is Pinsir, and I know a rock move is coming, so out comes King Hippo, dropping Pinsir's attack, and he eats a Stone Edge. I switch out to Kid on Storm Throw and back into King on Stone Edge. Now with Pinsir being at -2 attack, I figure it's safe to stay in with Kid Quick, and Wing Attack crits, doing about 75%. Stone Edge on the other hand does not crit, and Kid Quick can knock out Pinsir with another Wing Attack. Now it's Guzma's brand new Vikavolt. I switch into Hippo to nullify the Thunderbolt, then into Great Tiger and Bug Buzz. I think I've been playing with Piston Honda for so long at this point that I just assumed it has Signal Beam. It does a lot, but Citrus Berry keeps Great Tiger out of range of a regular one. I stay in, and Great Tiger outspeeds to hit a Fire Punch doing about 75%. Bug Buzz doesn't crit, and Tiger can use another Fire Punch to finish Vikavolt off. Guzma sends out his real ace, but now we have Pokemon that resist 2 of its moves. I send out Glass Joe, and she takes a Bug Buzz. From here I switch into Pizza Pasta on the S-Slash, and this baits Bug Buzz into Kid Quick. Kid Quick ends our final battle with Guzma using a Wing Attack. The difference EVs make to random trainers is insane. I severely underestimated Masquerading this challenge, and I really hope they carry this over for future games. It's sad that they tone Lusamine down in this game. One of the few things I dislike. At least she's still sort of insane. Lusamine awakens something inside of me with that stomp, and are forced into another battle. Lusamine leads with Clefable, and I had Kid Quick ready. Cross Poison does over half, and Clefable uses Hyper Voice despite having Psychic. Maybe Lusamine was predicting a switch? Next up is Beware, and I'm expecting Zen Headbutt, so I switch into Pizza Pasta. As Beware uses Drain Punch. I genuinely can't tell if Lusamine was reading my switch or if that was random. That would have been 4 times resisted by Crobat. At least I brought out my one dark type that fighting's neutral to. Drain Punch looks like it could kill, so I switch into Glass Joe as Beware uses Dual Chop. Is she doing this on purpose? Worse yet, Dual Chop just misses the threshold to activate the berry. I decide to spend a turn to recover, and now Lusamine decides to be smart. Zen Headbutt leaves Joe on a sliver. Though Citrus Berry and Recover bring Joe back to being healthy. Zen Headbutt does a lot, and I try to go for a brine that barely scratches Beware. I decided it's time to switch out, and just as I was thinking that, Lusamine switches into Lilligant. What's happening this battle? She even had the upper hand. By complete luck, I sent out Grey Tiger. Lusamine decides to stay in this time, Petal Dance still doing almost half, but a single Fire Punch takes out Lilligant. Milotic's out now, and this time I one-up Lusamine by bringing out Glass Joe on Hydro Pump, recovering her HP. I decide to stall a turn using Recover and see how much Dragon Pulse does. Dragon Pulse seems to do about a quarter, so I'm able to slowly whittle down Milotic with Shadow Ball while keeping Joe healthy with Recover, never being in risk of a crit. Is what I would have said, but then Lusamine once again switches out. Lopunny's on the field, a pretty smart switch considering she was expecting Shadow Ball, but that was the turn I pressed Recover. Lopunny has all the elemental punches, so naturally we should be expecting Thunder Punch, right? I switch into King Hippo, and Lopunny uses Ice Punch. Seriously, what's happening this battle? I switch into Grey Tiger, and Lusamine thankfully sticks to Ice Punch. The next turn she even uses Fire Punch, activating Grey Tiger's berry and letting him use a Bulldoze. However, Lopunny still outspeeds, but goes for an Ice Punch. A Fire Punch makes Grey Tiger fall for Lopunny on her deathbed. A tragedy. Milotic's back out. I switch into Glass Joe, and Lusamine learned from a mistake as Milotic hits Dragon Pulse. I should just stop questioning her moves. Well, regardless, I'm able to exact the plan I detailed earlier, and Lusamine this time does not switch out. Finally, we're back on Beware, and with Glass Joe still pretty healthy, I stay in on Dual Chop and use a brine, still leaving Beware in the green. I send out Piston Honda on Zen Headbutt, and after Beware misses the next one, a Thunderbolt finally puts an end to this bizarre battle. I take back everything I said about them toning Lusamine down. I guess her insanity is just a bit more subtle this time. Show, don't tell. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but I'm assuming she got the random move AI, and the smart plays we saw were just coincidental. But switching out's not a thing the random AI usually does. Guess it's best left a mystery. I've really never seen an AI that works like hers, and that's even more terrifying than a battle with a smart AI. With that out of the way, Lily's been saved, and now we need to save Lusamine, and more importantly, Guzma. But remember that thing I said about being careful with XP? Well, I left the XP share on the entire time during this arc, and everyone on my team's dangerously close to leveling up to the level cap. On to Poni Island. We're now on the final island, but we still have a ways to go. These initial trainers are all optional, but we'll be back later, for you specifically. And right into the vast Poni Canyon, we have our last battle with Dulce. Nothing really happens this battle, I was just wondering why he never got a full team. Like, we've been fighting the same Poipole, using the same strats 3 times now. Why not at least evolve into a Naganadel? Or at least keep the Furfrou from earlier. It's still not a bad Pokemon this late into the game. There are a couple of force trainers here, but for the most part they only have 1 or 2 Pokemon. And this time the XP share is off. But right before our next trial, there's a gauntlet of trainers, and they're actually pretty tough if you stay within the level caps. Especially this last trainer with 3 pretty strong Pokemon and a Noctowl. He can catch you off guard if you aren't prepared. 2 of my Pokemon actually did end up overleveling, Grey Tiger and Glass Joe, but this was mostly controlled as I don't intend to use them this trial. I grind my remaining Pokemon until they're just about to level up, and we begin the 7th trial. I bring Kid Quick, Piston Honda, and Pizza Pasta, using 3 encounters from the first island on the last one. Fighting the first 2 Pokemon leveled my team up to level 50, and we're ready for Kommo-o. Kommo-o, like Mimikyu, gets a boost to all of its stats. I'll lead with Pizza Pasta. Kommo-o has no super effective moves to hit Pizza Pasta, so I feel confident staying in, and Dragon Claw doesn't even do half. They really did Kommo-o dirty with his stats. Topsy-turvy makes Kommo-o weaker than it already is. But out comes his ally, Noivern, and unlike the original games, its level actually almost matches the Totem. There's a chance Noivern might use Screech, but I'd rather get Kid Quick out as soon as possible. Noivern goes for a Boom Burst that doesn't really do much despite having a base power of 140. Kommo-o's Mega Dragon Claw activates Kid Quick's Citrus Berry. This is exactly what I was waiting for. While Noivern Screech misses, this doesn't matter as Kid Quick uses a boosted acrobatics on the defenseless Kommo-o to not kill, and Kommo-o hits Thunder Punch. Alright, that Screech miss really did matter. I risk the crit, and Boom Burst leaves Kid on 8 HP. A second acrobatics brings down the 7th Totem, but Noivern's still a very real threat. I switch into Piston Honda, another Boom Burst, and 2 more will kill. But the next turn, Noivern uses Screech, and a Thunderbolt brings it below half. Noivern has no physical moves, so Piston can safely survive its next attack, winning us the battle with a final Thunderbolt. I'll admit, I did panic a bit when I saw that acrobatics didn't kill. I honestly was ready to sack Kid, but once it survived, I figured I could at least try to keep my whole team alive. Keeping them all alive mainly did come down to luck in the end, as had not even stuck to Boom Burst, I could have easily lost 2 of my Pokemon. Guzma, being the absolute Chad he is, breaks Lucamine's fall, and we've reached the point where the story finally begins to diverge from the originals. I wish they still found a way to keep the Nihilego Lucamine fusion dance. People usually overlook this fight considering that next one, but it can really catch you off guard if you're not prepared. Well, we have Great Tiger who completely walls Necrozma, so it's not really an issue for us. Before Dull shoves us into an Ultra Wormhole, we have some preparations to make. I first head back to the training school and start rummaging around the grass. Unfortunately, I run into a Meowth, who I don't really see being too useful at this point. On to plan B. I head back to the Pony Wilds. Here I have to fight every single trainer until we finally have an opportunity to fight Dancer Julia. All of our Oricori have a Focus Sash, but thankfully at this point in the game, Oricori's stats don't really hold up, and this battle is pretty painless. The reason for doing all this was so that I could get my hands on a Focus Sash of my own. We're now ready to dive into the wormhole. If you thought the 3DS gyro controls were terrible, my very real 3DS's controls may as well not exist. Eventually, through sheer luck, we finally make it to Ultra Megalopolis. And this was also such a missed opportunity. There's so much they could have done with the city, especially with how different the vibe is compared to the rest of Alola. It could have been something like Black City from Gen 5, but that's not what we're here for. Up the tower, we have to survive the fight that defines this game for most people. Ultra Necrozma has insane stats, even compared to other legendaries, and like the previous 2 totems, starts with an Omni boost. Not only that, but it's got an ability that works like an expert belt, all while being level 60, while our level cap is 55. But we came prepared. I'll lead with Pizza Pasta, and Necrozma naturally moves first and hits Dragon Pulse, which one-shots, if not for my Focus Sash. And Pizza Pasta survives to use Topsy Turvy. I switch into King Hippo, and Dragon Pulse still does over half, even with the drop stats. Citrus Berry takes King outside of range of another one. Necrozma uses Dragon Pulse, and King Hippo survives on 10 HP. Even with the stat drops, a super effective Crunch only does over half. I wasn't expecting Necrozma to also be bulky. I switch into Glass Joe, and Dragon Pulse does a lot. I reckon I can stay in, then Necrozma uses Photon Geyser. But Joe still manages to survive. She can then use a Shadow Ball to still not kill. But now I can get a free switch into Great Tiger. And after tanking a Power Jam, leaving him in the red, Necrozma finally goes down to Darkest Lariat. And Necrozma f***ing dies. I made a terrible mistake and accepted Poipole. Since I don't really want to switch up my team, I'm forced to let it go. If you didn't know, you can always pick it up later. But with that, unlike the originals, we still have a final trial to go. And for a final trial, we need to backtrack throughout all the islands, fighting all of the trial captains along the way. So despite the fact that the trial starts at Mina's house, I'll be using my entire team for this trial until the Totem, since there's no way that I can fight all the trainers with the same 3 Pokemon. The level cap for this portion will still be lifted, although we have to be careful since the one right after is 57. I don't know why they made all the levels so close together for this final segment, especially with how many battles there are. First up's Mina. I'll let Kid Quick absorb Morwell's Intimidate and switch into Great Tiger on Ironhead. Morwell somehow outspeeds to use Play Rough and goes down to a single Fire Punch. Either an Earthquake or a Stone Edge is coming, so I switch into King Hippo and Grand Ball goes for Stone Edge. Now I can get a switch into Kid Quick on Play Rough and then back into King on Stone Edge. I'm feeling a bit more confident with the dropped attack, so I stay in to use an Earthquake, doing little over half. Grand Ball uses a Play Rough, and despite the drops, King Hippo barely survives on 4 HP. Another Earthquake takes Grand Ball out. I switch into Kid Quick, then into Great Tiger on Psychic. He takes a Pollen Puff and Rabombi goes down to a Fire Punch. Actually a pretty tough fight for just being a trial battle. The remaining trial captains are far less remarkable in comparison, and the video is already long enough. Onto the Totem, I bring Great Tiger, Kid Quick, and Piston Honda. This terrifying creature gets a +2 boost to all of its stats. What an insane way to end the island challenge. Well, luckily for us, for whatever reason they gave her absolutely no coverage and is walled by Steel, Poison, and Fire types. Rabombi's not very effective Dazzling Gleam and Kid Quick's super effective Cross Poison do the same amount of damage. I actually think Dazzling Gleam did more. Pelipper's already out and sets up Rain, which is actually a pretty interesting way to remove a weakness for the Totem. Rabombi goes for another Dazzling Gleam, activating Citrus Berry, and Roost brings Kid Quick back to full. Pelipper sets up a stockpile. Rabombi uses a Quiver Dance, allowing Kid Quick to use a boosted Acrobatics, but we still need one more. Pelipper uses another stockpile. Rabombi's terrifying, but I'm pretty confident I can survive a Dazzling Gleam from full, but a move from Pelipper after will definitely kill. But none of that matters as Ribombee throws using another Quiver Dance, and Acrobatics finishes off the final Totem, and even Pelipper uses another Stockpile. I'm a bit scared of Spit Up now, so I stay in one more turn, and after an Acrobatics, Spit Up leaves Kid Quick in the red. I switch into Piston Honda and Scald that does just under half, and then burns. But the burn actually works out well for us as it brings Piston just low enough to activate its Citrus Berry. With the rain gone, I don't think Scald can kill from here, and the Thunderbolt wins us our final trial. And that could have gone far worse. I don't really understand why Ribombee doesn't have at least one coverage move. It even has 2 fairy moves. But I don't really want to restart this far in, so I'll take it. We can move on to the final grand trial, and for some reason, Hapu's levels are lower than the Totem. Hapu leads with Golurk, and I send out Pizza Pasta. Pizza sets up Reflect, and Earthquake does about a third. I honestly wasn't expecting a single foul play to kill. The Ace Mudsdale's already up. I switch into Piston Honda, and it uses its Z move, but ground moves can't hit Piston. Mudsdale goes down to 2 energy balls, and Gastrodon goes down to 1 energy ball, and the most Flagon can do is use Dragon Breath and goes down to 2 Signal Beams. Somehow the easiest trial so far. With that, we've completed the Island Challenge, but before we can take on the Pokémon League, we have one final battle with Gladion. Crobat goes down to a single Thunderbolt. Next up is Lucario, so I switch into King Hippo to lower its attack. Lucario uses Night Daze, so into Great Tiger on Grass Knot. I didn't even know I had that. Great Tiger takes a Hyper Voice, and then uses Brick Break to one-shot, revealing it was Zoroark all along. Who would have known? Though I'm surprised it never used its Z move. With Lucario out, I switch into Kid Quick, who Lucario doesn't really have much to hit with. In fact, his moveset's terrible. 2 Acrobatics later, Silverlee's out. Expecting a multi-attack that's a water type, I switch into Glass Joe, then Piston Honda on Crunch. A multi-attack's definitely gonna kill, so back into Glass Joe. I have to stay in, otherwise my team will take too much damage, and Crunch leaves Joe alive. Energy Ball doesn't quite do much, but I have a plan. Next I switch into King Hippo, and I'm able to bait another multi-attack, and switch back into Joe, restoring her HP. One more time and Joe's at full health again. I actually managed to show Restrain this time, and instead of risking the crit, I just keep doing this until Hail finally takes Silverlee, and we've beaten Gladion. Despite how hard Ultra Sun is, some of these late game trainers have really bad movesets, though you could say that about all of the vanilla Pokemon games I guess. Silverlee could have been really threatening though. Now there's a bit of an issue. The level cap's 57, 2 more levels than the last one, and with how many battles we've had, we're cutting it close. And unlike the originals, Ultra Sun's Mount Lanakila houses a lot of trainers. Thankfully we can actually skip most of them, though you do have to be careful of the ones you do have to fight. We'll just move past that. Ice Beam's also obtainable without needing to battle anyone. One more elevator right up and we've made it to the Pokémon League, and I cannot express how much I love the atmosphere of this league. Something about climbing the tallest mountain in Ula'ula, one that's considered sacred, and having the league built right into it, rather than being some building, hits right for me. And that's not even including the interiors, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Now truth be told, I've gotten kind of attached to this team, and I don't really want to switch any of them out. I think they're good enough. Right? We now have access to the move relearner, so we can finally give Piston Honda her long-awaited Bug Buzz, and also spruce up the moves of the rest of my team. I grind my team until they're close to leveling up, and I think we're ready to take on the league. And my final team is Pizza Pasta the Malamar, Glass Joe the Jellicent, Kid Quick the Crobat, King Hippo the Crocodile, Piston Honda the Vikavolt, and finally my starter, Great Tiger the Incineroar. Kukui gives us a pep talk and we're allowed passage into the league. Look how cool the interiors are. I love how they made it somewhat modern while also keeping the elements of the mountain intact, with bits of ore sticking out. Something about it just fits Alola's vibe. I think the Kalos' league has better rooms for its members, but Alola has a better league overall. Anyway, we have a choice, so I decided to start with Molayne as my team's pretty well equipped to deal with him. I bench Kid Quick. Molayne leads with Klefki and I send out Piston Honda. Klefki can't really do much, but it still goes for an Iron Head. Thunderbolt does over half. But the next turn, Klefki goes for a Reflect as the Thunderbolt takes it down. And this also levels up my entire team, ironically except for Piston Honda. Next up is Dugtrio, and I have no clue what Molayne's thinking. The best move Dugtrio has to hit Piston Honda is Sucker Punch, which doesn't even do a quarter, and an Energy Ball does over half. Another Sucker Punch and the next Energy Ball brings out Bisharp. I switch into Great Tiger who walls both of Bisharp's stabs and Night Slash crits. Bisharp uses the next scissor, activating Great Tiger's Citrus Berry, and Brick Break one-shots, also breaking the Reflect. Metagross next, so I switch into Glass Joe as Hammer Arm goes right through her. Zen Headbutt does just under half and Shadow Ball does over half. I don't want to risk crits this early on, so I get a free switch into King Hippo. He can outspeed to kill with an Earthquake. Magnezone has Sturdy, but after a heal, it can't really do much to stop ground moves. And that's the first Elite Four member down. Probably the easiest one for us, but I'm not entirely sure who's the next easiest. So I just followed the line and challenge Olivia. Kid once again sits this one out. Unlike last time, I actually have a better plan to handle her this time. How does Armaldo outspeed? At least it uses an X-Scissor which keeps Joe healthy, allowing Water Spout to one-shot. Or not. Well, Olivia heals next turn and we get a higher roll. Next up is Credilli, and this is where my plan begins. I send out Piston Honda, but Olivia reads me and uses Rock Tomb. Not a good start. Well, surely we'll use Rock Tomb again, right? Olivia reads me again and sets up Stealth Rocks on my switch to Pizza Pasta. Alright, let's try this one more time. But Olivia reads me a third time and I switch into Great Tiger as Credilli uses Rock Tomb. But it misses. I switch back into Pizza and I finally get hit with Rock Tomb. We just wanted that speed boost. From here, Pizza can proceed to use Superpower to simultaneously raise its attack and defense while doing super effective damage. Another one takes Credilli out, and Gigalith's out. Unfortunately, even with the +2 boost, Superpower still can't one-shot Gigalith. At least he gives Pizza another speed boost. I knew a heal was coming, so I used Psycho Cut to lower Gigalith's HP, and the final Superpower crushes Gigalith. Sand damage is starting to bring Pizza low, but luckily Lycanroc's next, and despite it having counter, a single Superpower can take it out. Lastly is Probopass, but I'm all out of superpowers. But it can't really do much to King Hippo. Olivia even knows as much as after a Bulldoze, Probopass doesn't even try to attack as it goes for a Sandstorm. Another Bulldoze and we beaten the second Elite Four member. May as well stick to the line, so Acerolla's next. Glass Joe's turn to take the bench. First up's Bayonet, but all it does is use Shadow Claw as Great Tiger one-shots with his Darkest Lariat. Next up is Palossand, so I can get a free switch into Piston Honda, and I can switch back into Great Tiger as Palossand uses its Z move. Back into Piston Honda and she finally finds a Pokemon that she can outspeed. 2 energy balls bring down Acerolla's ace. Out comes Frostless, and Great Tiger completely walls her. Blizzard does quite a bit, but not enough. Then Great Tiger gets frozen. Blizzard's not quite in crit range, so I try for a Fire Punch, but Great Tiger can't thaw out. I switch into Pizza Pasta as Blizzard does over half, but Citrus Berry pulls her out of range of another. But Frostless goes for a Confused Ray instead, which Pizza Pasta pushes past to hit Foul Play, which doesn't get the kill. Acerolla heals up Frostless, so I go for another Foul Play, which hits, but still doesn't get the kill. Acerolla heals up again, and Pizza Pasta breaks out of confusion, but we know Foul Play doesn't kill. Frostless goes for another Confuse Ray, and Pizza pushes through again, and a Psycho Cut finally brings Frostless down. What a great time for a crit. Next up is Delmise, and guess which Pokemon walls this thing? Yup, the one that's frozen. I switch into King Hippo, remembering at the last second that this thing's a grass type. Can you blame me? Into Kid Quicken and Acrobatics into a boosted Acrobatics knocks Delmise out. Finally is Drifblim. Kid uses a couple of bites to lower Drifblim's health as it flinches, then uses Amnesia. I switch into Piston Honda and Thunderbolt takes Drifblim down, winning us this long battle. This was way more difficult than it needed to be. Note to have some Lumberries on hand next time. Kahili gets too much hate. Most people's problem is that she's forgettable, or that she's just some random trainer since we haven't met her until this point. But isn't that most Elite Four members? I bench Grey Tiger. Kahili leads with Braviary, and I send out Piston Honda. Brave Bird comes out and does way more than what I was expecting. And the recall with Thunderbolt brings Braviary down. Next up is Mandibuzz, who's significantly weaker, but what it's lacking in attack, it makes up for in defense, as Thunderbolt doesn't get the kill. It's a 50-50 whether Kahili heals or not, but I can't let Mandibuzz get to full health again, so I stay in. As Kahili heals, Piston uses another Thunderbolt. Now I need to switch, and this was a great time to realize I have no fighting resists. How did I miss that? I send out King Hippo, and with a lowered attack, Brave Bird only does a third. But recall brings Mandibuzz into heal range. Kahili heals, and I misclicked to use Crunch. Alright, I can make up for this. Rock Slide misses. Brave Bird activates Citrus Berry. One more time, and Rock Slide misses again. That's a 1% chance. Mandibuzz goes for a Confuse with Flatter. This battle's scuffed. King Hippo finally gets to use the Rock Slide, and that's all it does? At least it flinches. I switch into Kid on Brave Bird, and Crobat's surprisingly bulky. Kahili's already used up all her heals, so I can use an Acrobatics into a boosted one to put an end to Mandibuzz. Next up is Toucannon, and people sleep on Toucannon. It has Skill Link with Rock Blast and Bullet Seed, and a Flying Z move coming off a strong Beak Blast, which as we've discovered, we can't resist. Expecting Rock Blast, I switch into King Hippo to lower its attack, but Toucannon goes for a Screech instead. I need to switch out, so I go into Quick expecting Bullet Seed. And oh no. Can Kid Quick survive a supersonic strike from a bird at -1 attack? Toucannon takes to the sky, fueled by nothing but hate, and crashes into Kid Quick, finally putting an end to him. Goodbye, Kid Quick. I send King Hippo back out and maybe he can survive a -2 bullet seed. Nope, Toucannon sets up a Beak Blast. King Hippo uses a crunch doing over half, and King gets burned. Beak Blast comes out, and crits, taking Hippo down. What's even going on this battle? I bring Glass Joe out. Toucannon gives her a free turn, and Ice Beam finishes Toucannon off. But we still have to deal with 2 more Pokemon. Hawlucha has Throat Chop, so I need to switch. But into who? I figure Glass Joe can take at least 1, and Ice Beam does over half. I need to risk the crit. And Glass Joe survives, another Ice Beam taking Hawlucha down. Lastly it's Oricorio, but my fire counter doesn't look like she can survive another hit. Pizza Pasta is the only one that's healthy. Air Slash does about a third, and of course I forgot to teach her Rock Slide. The next Air Slash doesn't crit or flinch, and Pizza can use Psycho Cut, which crits! Alright, we might have a chance now. Another Air Slash comes out, and it doesn't flinch. Another Psycho Cut wins us this terrifying battle and makes us the champion. What was I saying about Kahili getting too much hate? Man, I really didn't prepare for this battle at all. The last 3 were pretty easy, especially compared to the rest of the game, so I think I let my guard down. But Pizza pulled through, and we could at least keep 1 extra Pokemon alive. Kid Quick and King Hippo's losses hurt though. Unfortunately, we don't get the champion title quite yet, as we need to prove that we can defend the title first. Worse yet, even after all that build up, it's not Kukui we fight, but Hal. What can we even do with 4 Pokemon? Hal leads with Raichu, and I lead with Piston Honda. Psychic does just enough damage to activate Piston Citrus Berry, and Piston Honda hits Bug Buzz, one-shotting Raichu. Next up is Crabominable, and I know a Stone Edge is coming out, but none of my remaining Pokemon can resist that. I switch into Glass Joe, and Stone Edge does just under half. Stone Edge is also the only move that can hit Glass Joe, so maybe I have a chance. The high crit chance doesn't seem too promising though. Crab outspeeds and misses Stone Edge. Recover brings Glass Joe back to full. But the next turn Stone Edge hits, and crits. I very foolishly went for a Water Spout that of course doesn't do much. I can't let any of my other Pokemon take damage, so I stay in. And Hal switches out. Why? He had the upper hand, there was no reason to do that. Noivern takes a Shadow Ball that also lowers its special defense. I need a sack, so I stay in. And Dark Pulse leaves Glass Joe on 10 HP. And Glass Joe doesn't flinch, allowing Joe to heal back with Recover. I have a chance. I stay in, and Dark Pulse doesn't crit, and it doesn't flinch, and Ice Beam brings out Decidueye. Either move Decidueye will use is resisted by Great Tiger, and Decidueye goes for its Z move. A resisted Bloom Doom still does about half, but not enough to activate the berry. This is bad, but Great Tiger survives the smackdown. Darkest Lariat comes out, and doesn't get the kill, but Decidueye's in heal range, so I use this turn to set up a bulk up, and Smackdown doesn't get a crit. This time nothing can stop the Great Tiger's Darkest Lariat. Vaporeon's out and this is perfect. None of Vaporeon's moves can hit Glass Joe, and not only that, but the water move even heals her up. I use this as a chance to recover Joe's health back, as all Vaporeon does is use Baby Doll Eyes. It hasn't changed up its strat, so I start attacking with Shadow Ball until I have a better idea. I switch into Pizza Pasta and this couldn't have gone better as this turn, Vaporeon uses Charm, doubling Pizza's attack. But of course I'd make one last dumb mistake during my last battle as I've got to restore Superpower's power points. That could cost me the run. Pizza takes a Hydro Pump, and Psycho Cut slices through Vaporeon. Next up is Tauros, whose Intimidate gives Pizza yet another boost, and guess which move would have been great around now? I decide to stay in so I can bring out Glass Joe while it's still healthy. Tauros uses a Double Edge, and Pizza Pasta survives on 4 HP, but can a boosted Psycho Cut kill? It can if it crits. Pizza Pasta has pulled her weight and more this run. I know what I'm ordering once I'm done editing this video. Hal sends out his last Pokemon, the weakened Crabominable, and we have miraculously kept our entire team alive. Psycho Cut's super effective, so why fix what aim broke? And Crabominable outspeeds, taking at least one life before its end with Ice Hammer. Death is inevitable. It comes for us all, and more often than not, in surprising ways we can never predict. But in what universe can this fat, furry, f***ing abomination of a crab with an underbite and a stupid little hairpiece outspeed a squid? Malamar isn't the speediest, but look at the speed difference. I'm sorry, Pizza Pasta. Even the brightest stars die out eventually. Though they usually get the dignity not to be crushed by an onigiri wearing an adult diaper with a training bra. She'll be missed. I bring out my starter, Grey Tiger, and a Fire Punch knocks the remaining teeth out of this gap-toothed coconut, and we finally make Pineapple Head cry. Pineapple, squid, crab, big meaty claws. I'm losing my mind. We won the Nuzlocke. We won despite having only 4 Pokemon left, but man did it get rough towards the end. Mostly due to my own faults, but this game is genuinely really tough. Ultra Sun is one of, if not my favorite mainline game in the franchise. Everything about Ula'ula just hits right for me. The environment, the music, the general vibes, even the story and characters. But more importantly, its difficulty. I think most people accept this as being the hardest vanilla Pokemon game to do a Nuzlocke in, and it definitely deserves its reputation. Along with the Totems having some pretty cool setups and support Pokemon. Even the regular trainers have fully EV trained teams. No other game had done that before. I really had to plan a lot of my battles during my final run, which is something I never do during vanilla games. I'm probably one of the few people who never gets tired of playing through these games, and I definitely want to do more challenges than Ula'ula, but man, this game is long. And that's not even me talking about the cutscenes. The main campaign is just so dense, filled with so many important battles, that I think this video alone is going to be an hour long. And it's not even really that intricate of a challenge. Thanks for watching. I'll be doing some other games in between before I return to Ula'ula, but for now, if you enjoyed the video, how about a subscribe and a like? If not for me, how about for pizza pasta? And I hope you stick around for a future video.